Well, hello, everyone. Our guest today on the Get in the Mode podcast is the COO of a commercial real estate investment company. Jasmine Nazari heads investor relations and operations at Urban Green Investments. Jasmine, welcome to the Get in the Mode podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So, for the benefit of our listeners, can you tell us about Urban Green and your background?
Yeah, totally. So Urban Green Investments is a boutique, as you were saying, a boutique real estate investment company where we very often as a kid I would look around and I would say, well, who owns all these big, huge buildings and how does all this really work? Well, little did I know I'd find myself exactly learning what that is. And basically we buy bigger properties. Smaller than the huge institutions, but bigger than, mom and pop operations. And we add value to them and we raise funds. Oh, sorry. We raise funds for them. We do due diligence and then we raise funds for them. And then we add value and then split the profits with our investors.
That's great. And tell us a little bit about your background and what's your set of responsibilities as a CEO at Urban Green?
Yeah. So back to what Urban Green does, actually, we specialize in high octane value add investments. So we don't just buy assets and let the market do the work. Actually, a lot of our projects are mm, heavy in the value add element, and as a result, their profits or the returns are as well, and you can actually see a big difference. So, my background, I actually studied um, I was born and raised in San Francisco to awesome, beautiful Persian parents. They worked really hard on on me. I appreciate them and love them very much. And then focused on basically learning a bunch of different languages in school, and then went to UC Davis, where I studied soil biogeochemistry, which is soil genesis, soil morphology, soil mineralogy, soil physics, chemistry. Um, and it basically understanding the reason for that was to learn really how humans are so anthropologically dependent on soils. I thought that was really fascinating for food or resources or even um, just everything, filtering water and all that. I thought it was fascinating. And I graduated, and my family was like, okay, Jazz, enough with the blank checks. Let's let's get you working. And My uncle was sick with cancer at the time, so I stayed and took care of him for a few months. Then my family stepped in and took over, and they were awesome. But yeah, I found myself applying for an assistant position at Urban Green Investments just because I thought it was a green operation. I studied soils and the environment, and my family is in real estate. So I thought that, what better than marrying these two things? And then quickly I learned that the green in Urban Green was for dollars as well as the environment, if possible, but mostly the deal on the green that we all touch and know all too well. Um, so long story short, I started off as an assistant to our incredible CEO, and our team has been working together for the past 8 years. Although Urban Green started a few years prior to that, it's been over 10 years now that the firm has been going on, but I joined about 8 years ago, and slowly or quickly, actually pretty quickly, implemented a bunch of different software that helped us really have a better command of how we do what we do, what our investors want from us, what they want from basically how they want to be spoken to or reported to, how we manage things internally, how we do our accounting, how we manage documents, how we communicate with each other. Just implemented a bunch of different software that helped us actually lean out and become what I call the best team around. Long story, but that's it. Yeah,
That's
awesome
awesome.
team.
Like
Yeah.
from one green to another green, so quite the jump.
Yes.
And you've been at Urban Green for how many years at the moment? So you've been here for some time, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was my first job out of grad school. My first job I applied to, and I got it. So I kind of fell in love with when I fall in love with something, I'm like fully. It's like my baby. Urban Green's really like my baby, and it's been 8 years.
That's great. Yeah. So, at a high level as a COO, what are some strategic objectives that you're looking to execute on at Urban Green?
Yeah, it mostly revolves around being getting curious about how people do what they do, and you kind of do like a personal, like an operational audit, and you study how each. Well, we have a lot going on, right? Because we actually, one thing I forgot to mention or didn't uh didn't mention yet is what sets Urban Green apart is we actually specialize in a specifically lucrative part of the capital stack called the co-GP capital stack. So in any structured deal, as you guys know, there's the general partner and then the limited partner. And the general partner, which is the GP, that's the acronym for it, and the LP have different responsibilities. But the GP is responsible for finding the deal, for managing the deal, for adding value to the deal, and then reporting to the LP. So in this process, we, over time, as a result of the different software that we implemented, we realize our investors really love when we partner with different groups. So they get diversification across sponsor, asset type, and location. So we don't just work ourselves on deals. We actually have over 15 different sponsors that we work with. One is specializes in data centers, one specializes in industrial real estate, another one in senior housing, another one in multifamily in the southeast, another one in multifamily in the northeast, and so on. So how we work is we get curious and we see what they want help with or what works, what doesn't work. Um, and we step in and kind of round out any gaps or inefficiencies. So my advice is just get really curious because that's where you can find a lot of um, just interesting things that you need to know. Especially when it's too late, you don't want to do that, right? So you want to be ahead of the ball, and it just makes things. People are more independent that way. They don't need to like ask other people for things. It's just at their own fingertips.
We talked a little bit about the high level. Let's kind of
Yeah.
get into more the day to day. What does a typical day at business look like for you?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of joke that like we kind of seriously do believe that like slowly get more and more efficient so that we can actually go on more vacations, right? Because the work should be um get to more vacations is the goal. I mean, not because we love working together. It's really the best
Right.
team around, but we kind of wish it for each other.
Yeah.
So we can work well and come back. I mean, go on vacation and come back to excitedly to a machine
That's
that works.
definitely a COO agenda. So that's a good strategic goal to work towards.
Yeah, yeah. Create this machine with all these spokes and
Right.
gears that work. So day to day, I guess it starts off with kind of email, as you would expect. Calendaring is huge, obviously, but really we have an API that we have with a company named Deal Cloud that allows us to immediately push updates to our asset management platform. So whether the updates are coming from us or from a partner of ours, we can quickly push them there from our email. So it helps us kind of stay accurate and empowered. And then from there, probably I spend a good chunk of time updating our investor relations platform, which is Juniper Square. So Deal Cloud has our asset management tools. That's where we get updates from our sponsors and our partners, and we push updates there too and read them, um, and take action, most importantly, accordingly. And then after that, it's the investors, right? For me specifically, because we have over 600 investors and I'm one person. So we have over 40 investments. We've completed, we've managed over 100 to date, and currently manage about 40 portfolios, but it's like well over 60 properties at the moment. So then I spent some time focusing on investor relations and how these different investors, what's going on, getting reports to them, getting distributions out, answering questions as they come ad hoc, or doing analysis ad hoc. Um, and then I spend a good chunk of my time on the phone
Yeah.
and just following up with people and kind of exploring new things and also doing research on new deals. That's
Yeah.
what excites us all.
That's awesome. Now, you talked a little bit about the software used there, the tech stack that you've put together. Let's take a step back and kind of, looking back at your 8 years in the real estate, private equity real estate, as well as
Yeah.
looking forward. What is the role of technology in private equity real estate?
Yeah.
What areas do you see it providing value?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll answer it in like three: the past, present, and future. So in the past, I'll say that private equity real estate is probably the slowest moving dinosaur or vertical of the bunch. Really, it is a dinosaur. It's very much an old boys club, increasingly a more boys and girls club. And really, there were not many tools. So when I joined 8 years ago, I think within the first like 6 months, we found Juniper Square, and Juniper Square is now, I stand behind them all day, every day. They're incredible. But it was a PowerPoint presentation when we first started. It was really a deck, and we signed. It was literally like I don't know. It was like a workflow that we were talking through, or it was incredible even then as a PowerPoint. Right? We were like, sign us up. Can we invest? The investing part didn't work. They were fully capitalized. But anyway, on the tool side, they were scarce and they were weak if they did exist. Fast forward to currently, we are using the best tools of the bunch. I always say you're only as good as your command of the tools that you have, not just the tools, but you have to have a very strong command of them. So we are using the best of them, really. They're incredible. And I think investors are going to come to expect this information and more, just like a bank account, right? Where they can log into their bank and get any information that they want and more, right? So the information has to be alive currently. It has to be drillable so they can look into details. I think in the next year or two, they're maybe even going to want to see details of the financials and how it all flows. So maybe some more interesting graphics or interesting um, data representation there that could be really cool. But I think ultimately in the future, and it's a company that's actively working on this now. They're excellent. We work with them too. It's called Red Swan, which they're spearheading the tokenization of private equity real estate, and they're really good at it. Where they kind of created the secondary market through the blockchain for active private equity positions. So some people who want to stay in the deal can, some people who want to exit can. Highly recommend them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you talked a lot about the data and the dashboards, intelligence on deals, almost like revenue intelligence. That's a big buzzword in that space, right? As,
Hmm.
as a COO, if someone could make all the data and intelligence available for you, what are some data points that you would want to look at from a deal acquisition standpoint? I've got it's a two-part question. I'll start here first. From a deal acquisition standpoint, what data points would you want to look at?
Basically, we're looking for arbitrage or alpha. So we're seeking those opportunities that are untapped into, and also it's things that are that part of that value add component. Kind of visionary projects that are really hard to calibrate or quantify. So it involves actually a good amount of in-person work, right? You have to go there, you have to envision it, you have to get an action around it. So in terms of information that I wish I can have, I don't think there's a metric for it yet, but it would be basically be this arbitrage metric, something that is
Hmm.
special about this project that value could be added, or upzoning, or not just something simple like negotiating a better rent. That's not
Right.
too visionary, but you need to it needs to have a special, something special about it, and that's the metric. I would call it the special metric.
That's awesome. No, I
Yeah.
think, as we encounter AI and machine learning, right, and a lot of these data sets and data points could be added and perhaps they could, with machine learning, it could get better at prediction and showing that type of intelligence. Now,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
the second part of my question was more towards your internal process enhancements. What sort of data points would you want to look at from internally? Like, how can we enhance certain processes, certain operations? What would you want to see there?
Hmm. That's also another really good question. Internally, we're pretty tight. Like we're pretty, if I may say, like we run a tight ship, and we seem to be we know everything that's happening, and we know what each of us need to do, or what each of us get to do and are responsible for. So I will say the most important thing internally is to a phrase that I heard that was really good was don't hire anyone that you wouldn't work for. So like basically be very intentional with your
Yeah.
hires, because
Mhm.
a bad hire is way more expensive than paying a good hire more. So I guess I would be very intentional with who you hire, because the
Yeah.
time that goes into it and the investment is huge.
Yeah, I think talent acquisition, and is an integral part of. I mean, it's probably the make or break deal for an internal operation. So,
Yep, very
spot
well
on
said.
on that. Yeah. Um, well, let's talk about some exciting developments that are taking place in the private equity world of real estate.
Yeah.
What are some things that you're seeing there?
Exciting things happening. Man, cap rates are compressing and interest rates are low, so it's just a really frothy space. Um, as you know, right before the call, we were discussing kind of finding these deals, and we have a lot of lines in the water, lines,
Yeah.
deals that we're pursuing. So it's exciting, but at the same time, like we don't know what's ahead. So really, the deal has to stand on those special metrics, those things that make it both mm, palatable now and de-risked now, slightly de-risked now, but also with a huge upside component. So yeah,
We talked about exciting developments that are taking place in the real estate. I want to know more
yeah.
about emerging tech, perhaps, that you're seeing, that you think is going to play a role in those exciting developments.
When you say emerging tech, does that
It could
mean?
be crypto, it could be blockchain, or AR, VR, any of these newer technologies that are happening.
Oh yeah, those are huge opportunities. I think the AR VR would be really interesting for our investors to experience when we first onboard a deal. But when it comes to our, I mean, I think the crypto thing's already here. Like the
Right.
Red Swan's doing big things, and I think they'll be really successful. Um, I'm trying to think beyond that. Um, it's just going to be this like really interesting or kind of a beautiful renaissance of data that's going to create I think it's going to make for more opportunistic deals to need to occur. Otherwise everyone has access to the same information. There's really very little like the networking thing's already kind of mm, more democratized in a sense. It's not like this group and that group, and it's not just these bunch of big players. There's a lot of players now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, some rapid fire questions for you. Uh, you ready?
Yes. Yeah.
What's a great book you've read in the past 6 months?
Oh man, I'm reading two books. One is Zeckendorf, the best book on private equity real estate. He was the godfather of it. And
Right.
the next one is A Whole New Earth, or A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which is more spiritual. It's excellent.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you could wave a magic wand and solve one problem at your current position at Urban Green, what would that be?
Um, Access to, or being awarded every deal that we want.
Right.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
because we don't have any problems, I don't think, with operations at all. Thank God. We just want access to more deals. We just want more deals,
Got it.
and we'll
Okay.
get them.
Yes. Now, in your Spotify or whatever you use for music, what's the artist or song that's been on repeat?
Oh man, that's a great question. Um, I have so many. I can't decide. Oh man, there's I have some Persian music on there. A
Uh,
girlfriend of mine created. I can't think of anything specific,
all
but
right, all right.
dancing is
No
my
artist
favorite thing.
that you.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Um, I said dancing is one of my favorite things to do. So anything. I'm really open.
What's the what sort of dancing? Any genre?
House music. House music. Yeah, my
Okay,
partner and I,
all
we
right.
love dancing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me, what's a book that you're reading now?
So I've been reading. I've been kind of raving about this book. It's called The Business of
What?
Expertise. It's by
Oh,
this guy. You ever seen this movie? It's called The Office Space, not the TV show. It's kind of came back in the
oh,
'80s. It's
interesting.
a tech company where they steal a bunch of money from the company and they kind of round off the decimals and they kind of put it in a bank account, because they're frustrated with their management and stuff. So there's
Mm.
this consultants who are brought in to bring in some efficiencies within that company. They're called Bob and Bob, so they're two Bobs. So the guy who wrote this book, The Business of Expertise, he's got a podcast called Two Bobs. It's a really good podcast.
Oh,
I highly recommend it. But that book
thank you
has,
for that.
yeah, so that's been an amazing book that I've read. And I've also gotten another book that I got from the library. It's called Culture Code. I haven't gotten into it. And then there's a third book that I'm kind of pausing it right now. It's called Atomic Habits. It's about
Oh,
developing good
love that book.
habits and breaking. Yeah, of course, it's a bestseller.
It
So
was so good, so good.
yeah.
And then
Well,
what about your second? What about music? What are you
music,
listening to
yes, on repeat or just in general.
on
I'll
repeat?
say what I've been playing for the last 2 months. I think it's been mostly a little bit of John Mayer and then Lana Del Rey, and
Solid.
then Christine and the Queens. She's a French
Hmm.
indie artist. I came across her on this COVID, when everything went into the lockdown. They did like a live aid version of like a locked down concert. It was televised
Wow.
in all these different, streaming and all of that. And I found her, I discovered her in that, in that concert series. And ever since I've become a fan of her. So yeah,
Noted. I took notes on both of those.
yes.
Thank
So,
you.
well, great having a conversation.
Thank you for having me.